Hey, there's been a break in the Red Obsidian Remnant updates, so I thought I'd talk about something different today. And it's a pretty hot subject, especially with the rise of social media. It's about how to support people who create niche content. And I feel like people get stuck on, you like someone who does art or commissions or someone who does videos like me or other projects. People who do reviews on maybe other products like, beauty products or books or movies, and people get stuck on, hey, I like this person's work, but I can't support them financially, I can't help them at all. Obviously, no matter what it is, money, people who can support you on Patreon or donate or whatever. If you're on Twitch, if they can send you bits regularly, obviously that does help, especially if you're trying to do it full time, or you're like me where you're not doing it full time but you're treating it like it's full time, and you still have expenses that kind of pile up, especially with the stuff that I've had to deal with this past month. But I feel like people should look into just giving interaction on work and projects more often. And I know for me, the comments that I get definitely helps me. Obviously, I am in a pretty shitty situation right now. I have like pretty much no money left for the month. I'm gonna have to pretty much live on nothing. I'm not sure how I'm gonna get used to this. I don't know how I'm gonna even see my friends. Past this past trip that I just got back from a few weeks ago. But engagement goes a long way, especially for artists. We know with me, it's not really much of a problem, but with artists, a huge problem is people stealing their work and retweeting it and then getting like an exponential amount of exposure than the original artist did, which sucks because if you draw something really good, those people put like hours and hours and hours into that stuff, and people are so closed-minded and just they're just assholes. They'll steal the content and get all this exposure, and they'll sometimes I think they even will Photoshop out the tag. I don't think most people who steal stuff even have the know-how to do that, but it's a pretty big problem, especially when putting so much of your livelihood into your work can be a pretty big part of how you stay afloat. I feel like Patreon has done a great boon for kind of removing the whole starving artist trope. Obviously, it's not perfect. If it was, I know a lot of people, some sites that I follow, there's a site called the Tokusatsu Network, which translates a lot of really cool stuff for like Ultraman, Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, Godzilla, that whole genre. And those guys are struggling on Patreon. Like, I know that I haven't checked their site or their Patreon in a while, but last I checked it, they really weren't making enough. And I feel like it's a shame. There's so many people out there producing original content that is not mainstream. The stuff that I do, for the most part, is not mainstream. I'd argue that maybe some of the bigger stuff like Tales and Muso that I do is mainstream, but in the grand spectrum of things, like it's really not. Like you're not going to see a big channel covering those games for more than like one or two videos, and obviously they're not going to be playing it to the point where they can make the guides and stuff that I do and the rest of the community does. People like Swillow and Omega, One Sanitarium, all those guys are, Swillow is in a pretty good spot. It's made me happy to see a lot more of the niche people doing good, whether it's on here or on Twitch or on both. Some people don't have a presence on both, and having a presence on both is pretty difficult. I know some of the bigger partners that I follow on Twitch, I think they actually hire somebody to handle their YouTube channels, which I think is interesting. I'm genuinely curious to see like how much those people make. Like, is it just like a minimum wage? Like, I think people have a huge misconception of how much people make on here. Now, if you go on an artist and you click on their Patreon and they're making like a couple grand a month, then unless they're like renting out a mansion or something, that they're in a pretty good financial spot. But I think people just think that you get partnered on here or on Twitch and they think that you're a millionaire. It's definitely not true. There are some people who are very well off, and I think a lot of that is just from the subscription program. Donations are great. There are some people that probably do make a pretty significant amount of income from the donations, but it's more about sustainable income, and that's one thing that Patreon has really helped with. And for me, I'm definitely in a spot where I am going to have to promote it more often, at least for the time being, until I recover from this relapse. I am still dealing with a lot of symptoms. I had a pretty awful night last night, a pretty bad anxiety attack, and some bad self-loathing and stuff. Until I get that squared away, which may not happen anytime soon given my circumstances, I will have to promote it more often. But even for me, the $56 that I get a month has helped. I'm able to get smaller stuff more often. It pays for XSplit. It pays for the smaller games. Like I'm probably going to get Marvel vs. Capcom Ultimate. I decided that, just for the sake of my local meetup here, I know that people here are going to be playing it. It looks fun. Most of the hate towards it is just towards the graphics, which I have to admit, it's an embarrassment, to have those character models on, the PlayStation conference in front of hundreds of thousands of people. I think that they honestly could have just played the character trailer, and that would have sold the game much more. But now you have all these memes all over the place, and I admit the memes are funny, but the problem is that they have this whole negative stigma around the game that the FGC is kind of perpetuating as well. They're saying that Dragon Ball Z Fighters is going to be much better and things like that, which I think is a shame. They removed the assist mechanic because they wanted to try something new, but as typical in games, people don't want to try new mechanics. I try to be open-minded with new mechanics. I've been open-minded with Tales of Zestiria. I ended up hating the game. I played it for like under 10 hours, and I didn't finish it. But I was willing to give it a chance when the price was right. That price was $6, by the way. But I feel like people need to just realize that you can give just a positive reinforcement or engagement towards someone's work if they're struggling. And obviously, it's not going to solve their financial problems, but it will help them to be encouraged to keep going. And that's kind of a problem I've had. I've had really low engagement, and now I'm having all these money problems, and the combination of that, I have a mind that just tells me to just quit, and you're wasting your time, and you should give up and delete it. I actually got pretty close to deleting it this morning. I was in such a bad state mentally. I went to the account settings page, and I almost clicked to the page where I deleted it, and I'm glad that I didn't. But this is not something that's exclusive to me. I'm sure there's plenty of artists out there that have worked their ass off on a really good piece of art, and some douchebag retweets it, not retweets it, but takes it and claims it as their own. It doesn't give any ownership or credit back to the original person. And that really sucks. People who are artists for a living, or at least are trying to be, maybe they work part-time, or they're in a spot like I am where they have another source of income, but it's kind of diminishing, and it happens overnight, so to speak, and they're not really able to make the difference. It sucks that people do that. I've had people steal my videos in the past, but that doesn't really happen anymore, because I think people are smart enough to know that stealing a Dynasty Warriors or Tales video is not going to make them millionaires. But I have had it happen to me in the past, but for me, a lot of it is just the engagement. When people say that they appreciate my work and stuff, that's what keeps me going. That's how I'm able to do this every day. I'm lucky to be in a point where I have a bunch of stuff that I haven't really gotten around to playing that I may or may not stick with. I may just make some short guides or overviews for them and move on. But I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I have enough stuff to play, and my computer's working well right now, that I can still continue to do it. But I guess people just have a lot of misconceptions about content creators. They either think you're a millionaire, or they think you're a broke person, and they don't know how to support you. And I think that sometimes I get tweets on Twitter, people just say, keep it up, or this video helps, or a random person retweets it. That kind of stuff really keeps me going. Obviously, it's not going to solve my financial problems, but engagement is a big part of boosting morale. And I feel like people still take niche content creators for granted. I know, Tokusatsu Network, it's a pretty small site. The English-speaking Tokusatsu community is very small. At least from what I've seen on Twitter, I follow a lot of them. Pretty much everyone knows everyone. And, the Patreon, as far as I know, is not doing well. But they do get a lot of positive comments. They do have some of them work on some of the larger Facebook pages, and they get a lot of positive comments and engagement on there. And I think that's what keeps them going as well. I don't think any of them are intending to make that site their living, but it just sucks that you can be doing something outside of the box, and it's an uphill battle now, especially with all the advertisers backing out on YouTube. People will steal articles and stuff like that. It's a shame. People don't realize that if you take these people for granted, and I'm not even talking about myself, I'm talking about people who do like larger stuff like translations from like Japanese sites and subs and stuff. Even in the anime community, people take that stuff for granted, and they get shocked when those people leave. They're not able to support their lifestyle doing it. And obviously that varies from person to person, but doing this stuff is time consuming, especially like doing subtitles. People freak out when a sub for like Kamen Rider is like a day late or something. And it's like, well, you guys aren't supporting them. And I know that at least with subtitles and stuff, it's more of a legal gray area. People don't want to support a site that might get shut down. I can understand that, but it happens a lot with artists too. Obviously, you draw something nice, or you make a video like on here, and it's not really infringing on any copyrights, but it can still be a grind to get people to support you. But at the same time, sometimes just the engagement really helps, and that's why it sucks that artists have it much worse off than I do. Like, a lot of them are in really dire straits too, and there's just a bunch of douchebags on social media that will just steal it, pretty much, just outright steal it, take all the exposure, and the person who made it is pretty much unknown. I'm not really sure what can be done to solve this, but I just wanted to tell people that if you comment on here and you feel bad that you can't support me financially, that is definitely not the case. I feel like the comments can help more in some cases. There's sometimes I do get new projects. I do kind of stretch my wallet thin to do new projects, and it doesn't work. That's common. Big businesses deal with that. I feel like Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, unless they're able to really turn things around and get the high level players on board, and maybe fix the graphics and kind of have a more transparent plan on what the post-launch content is going to be. Right now, we know that there is going to be one DLC pack, but a lot of people are concerned that this is going to be something that's going to be dropped, which is basically what happened with Marvel 3. People were excited for Marvel 3 because it was coming out in a new era. It was more accessible. Like, pretty much all the previous Versus game ports were not accessible. The best Marvel 2 port was on Dreamcast, which, the Dreamcast was not really an attractive console if you didn't want to play Sonic, Shenmue, or Capcom arcade ports. There wasn't really a whole lot else there to offer, so unless you had an arcade near you, there wasn't really an easy way to play it. Marvel 3 came out at a time where people thought that they had negotiated a better agreement for the license so that it could be supported, which is something that people have wanted for the Versus games for a long time. Obviously Street Fighter 4 had been out for about 2 years at that point, and obviously they supported that game for about 6 years, which for a fighting game is that's a really long time. Like, even big stuff like Madden and FIFA and WWE, like all those games are barely supported for a year before they move on to the next one. And people had the I can't really call it naive, but the somewhat realistic assumption that they had negotiated a better agreement. And what happened? I'm sure we all know what happened. Like, they ended up not really having the license for more than a year and a half or so. I don't know exactly how long it was, but I know that they were not able to support the game past Ultimate Marvel. I think they pushed like one final patch, 1 or 2 patches for Ultimate Marvel, and that was it. And people have a high hope that they will support it. I think that if the game does get constant nerfs and changes, the Versus community is going to have to get used to that, because Marvel games have always been kind of a no man's land in terms of balance. They just kind of get released, and they've made some minor changes to Marvel 3, but that was it. The game was perpetually broken, and people like that, for better or for worse. But I feel like engagement matters. We have this whole engagement problem with Marvel Infinite. It's mostly negative towards the graphics, and people accusing the big personalities in the FGC for being shills, which would honestly shock me. You look at the budget for that game is obviously small. I think that the Marvel Games new subsidiary or whatever is obviously giving way more money towards stuff like Insomniac Spider-Man than they would Marvel Infinite. That's probably why the character models are all over the place. They probably outsourced them or something. But I'm probably going to be getting that. Maybe I'll play through the demo or something. I'll try to fight with my capture card. I am still in the works of getting a new capture card. My friend needs to make sure that it's going to work okay. He doesn't want to give me something bad because he knows how bad my financial situation is at the moment and how bad my luck has been with capture cards. So I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing console-wise, but I just wanted to thank the people who comment on here regularly. It means more than I let on, and I think that it's a common misconception. You know, people think that, you know, if you can't send like $20 to somebody a month, that you're not contributing. You know, if your comment and it's a constructive comment and you just tell someone to keep it up, or, you know, hey, this really helped me, that goes a long way. And I know for artists it's the same way too. You know, for artists even more so, because, you know, they get that positive reinforcement and that exposure, and, you know, those people will pass it on to other people. You know, if they get a good commission, then they'll you know, they get the word of mouth from other people. And obviously it's a slow process unless you're lucky, but that can go a long way. You know, even if douchebags are stealing your art, you know, if you have a good public image, it can really go a long way. Anyway, that's it for now. I've had a pretty shitty night and morning. I'm probably going to take it easy for a few days. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep doing daily stuff. I do have some unfinished business with Drifting Lands and the Vagrants. I haven't even gotten to the Vagrant yet. The Vagrant kind of starts, I'll tell you right now, the game starts very slow. You pretty much start with a basic 4-hit square string, and you have to grind for all your moves, which is not uncommon, but it does seem kind of slow-paced. I just haven't been feeling that well mentally and physically, so I'll probably get around to that sometime this week. I'll try to get some other stuff out as well. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and post my links in the description as per usual, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.